Hello there, and welcome to Tom's Warhammer Minis. The Visarch echoes the height of the Adari's true power. Part of the Triumvirate of Yinnead, he is Yvaine's escort, teacher, and confidant, as he wields the sword of silent screams, known as the Crone Sword Asavar. In this second guide, focusing on the Triumvirate of Yinnead, I'll be showcasing a special take on this awesome model, using the power of contrast paints. From the red armour, where there will be zero edge highlighting involved, to the ethereal blade that's non-metallic, and guidance on achieving the freehanding with incredible ease. It's a daunting model. I know myself, having avoided it for many years, but today I get to showcase how to do this model easily. So, grab your paints, grab your brushes, let's get hobbying. And we're starting with the Visarch. Nice and simple. He's a really elegant model, it's super cool, and I'm going to make it really easy to paint for all of you guys. So, to begin with, things to know, it is fully assembled and the model has been completely primed in white scar. Now, with that done, our main focus is going to be the body armour to get that started. And before we start slapping orange and reds on, because I'm going to do the classic technique like I like to do of building up an underlayer, and then we paint on that final colour, we paint it up to the edges, not including the edges, meaning something like the Eldari, which has such crisp and has hundreds of highlights, it's automatically in place, and you don't have to do a single edge highlight. That's how cool contrast paints can be if you know how to use them. But before we get to that stage, we need to mark out a couple of areas first, and that's the black armour. So it's going to be like a space marine. He's got soft seal armour, as well as the wraps that go around him, the bindings that are holding up these armour pieces. So, nice and simple. The colour is Black Templar. Now this is nice and simple in the sense that it will pull away from the edge and leave a nice grey highlight, and we can just focus the paint a little bit more heavily into that central canal, for instance on these leather straps around here, and it means that we don't have to highlight them later on because it's darker in the centre, lighter on the edge. Why highlight it when it's already highlighted? So nice and simple, just do a little 360. You've got the back of each leg here just behind the kneecap. The groin area will be red. That's what you can see on the box art. And then obviously you've got all these leather straps. Nice and simple. Try not to catch the ropes because they're going to be a different colour. You've got the handles or the hilt of the sword, as well as the dagger here. They're also in Black Templar too. The other one that's slightly hidden, you've got under the arm, and you can reach under the arm on this side, but the real hidden one is the actual neck, which you can't see on this side. But as I turn him to that sort of angle, you can absolutely reach a small airbrush on the inside of that and just paint it with Black Templar too. So take your time, just use a nice small airbrush just to really get it in without catching the armour. If you do make any mistakes, you can correct with white scar. So let that dry and we'll move on to starting his armour. Next up, we're going to create an underlayer to our Visarch's colour. Now obviously the armour is red, but orange is a natural highlight, and we're going to build up to that highlight colour. Now, the colour mix here is Gryph Hound Orange. It's a really great contrast paint, and it does orange really effectively that normal layer paints just don't achieve. Not easily, anyway. So, we are going to thin this down rather heavily. It's going to be a 1-to-1 ratio. So, one part of Lahmium Medium, one part of Gryph Hound Orange. Essentially, the Lahmium Medium is going to give us a lot of control, a lot of flow as we apply this paint all over. Now, I've created a rather large mix of this because essentially in the next step, I'm going to show you that I've base coated the entire armour again with the same paint, but I want to show you what it looks like with one paint, just so you get an idea of what your model should look like at this stage. So, things to note, if you do catch, say for instance, other areas you don't want to, obviously the metallics don't matter because we're going to base coat those, but say for instance the cloth, if you wash your brush quickly and with a damp brush just quickly wipe it away, the Lahmium Medium will help remove that. Worst comes to worst, if you catch things like the ropes that you see up here, when you defer, you can just relayer in white scar. It's not the end of the world. Now, always start from the top, work your way down, and when I say top, you don't have to start right at the top. If you want to start with a leg, and that's where I started, you can absolutely do that, but start at the top of the leg, work your way down, because gravity, especially with that paint thinned down as heavily as it is, will pull the paint down, and you don't want it to pull heavily. There's no point starting at the bottom, otherwise you're just going to have this excess of liquid, and it's just going to ruin the model and your paintwork. So take your time, just get that painted. Make a large enough mix that you're going to be able to paint this again. But obviously before we apply the second coat, it needs to fully dry. So for the time being, I let this fully dry, and while the mix is there, the Lahmium Medium will keep it nice and fresh in that 1-to-1 mix, so you can apply it from the same mixture again. And here we are. This is the second layer of that same colour mix applied all over, and you can see it's a much more vivid orange, and it works really more closely to the red that we're going to be building up in the next step. Now, there is a reason. In the sense, it's not just the edge highlight colour that we want to achieve when we paint up to those edges in the next step, but not including those edges. There is another reason. The way contrast paints work, they pull in certain areas, creating that kind of shadow effect. And when you look at the curvature of this model, there are areas where it'll pull slightly more than it does others. And when you look at the box art model, there's a lot of different reds, from brighter reds to darker, more blacker reds in tone, the way they've been glazed into the armour. Essentially, this is what we've achieved here. We've created an underlayer where there's brighter oranges, darker oranges all around the model in different areas. So when we paint the red over that, which will be a thinned down red, it will showcase those darker and lighter areas too. So there is method to madness, in the sense it's not just me painting it to create an edge highlight colour. There's a lot more theory applied to this. So once again, once this second layer is done, just let it dry completely before we move on to the next step of applying a red. And next up, as you can see, we're adding in a red colour just to finish off that armour. It's not quite finished though, we'll be doing something else with it, but we'll talk about that in a second. The colour this time is Blood Angels Red, and I have thinned this down rather heavily. It's a 1-to-1 mix, so 1 part Blood Angels Red to roughly 1 part of Lahmium Medium as a ratio. Now, nice and simply, you will need a small airbrush for this. There's no give or take here. The areas of the armour panels are super small. After all, it's Eldari armour. But what we can do is, with a small airbrush, just paint this into the areas, essentially up to the edges, not including the edges, and all those highlights are in place. It saves a ton of time, because this is a highlight heaven, or hell, as you could imagine. So it does save a lot of time. Be very precise. The Lahmium Medium will help if you make a mistake, just to quickly wash your brush and wipe off the excess paint. Now, the reason I've gone Blood Angels Red rather than Bile Red is very bright, but it's also very flat. Whereas Blood Angels Red has a lot of sort of dark qualities where it will sort of darken heavily where it pulls. But that's kind of the advantage we want, even when it's thinned down. Now, thinned down, it's a glaze, and essentially we're just turning the orange colour spectrum towards red. And it just really matches the box art colour here. So, the armour's not quite finished. When you look at the box art, there's lots and lots of brightness to it. And essentially, it's just hundreds of spot highlights. So I'll be covering that in the next step. But just take your time. Take it armour panel by armour panel. Don't rush it. Just be patient. And the reward speaks for itself. And finally, we're finishing off all of that red armour. Nice and simple. We're just applying spot highlights here. And the colour is Lugganath Orange. It really enhances that red, and it really gives that eccentric look that the Visarch has. Now, my recommendation here, if you're not sure where to put the spot highlights, and obviously if you're not sure what a spot highlight is, essentially it's a highlight that's a simple dot. Most of the time, it's on the most raised edges. So, for example, corners, where the most prominent light would hit an area. But on this model, there's a lot of curved areas, and you can put the spot highlights there too. Essentially, what I'm saying is refer to the box art, because that gives you a real in-depth guidance of where the Heavy Metal team have placed all of theirs. And there are quite a lot. Does it need it all? No, it's down to you how little or how many you want to do. But it gives you an idea. It really enhances the overall look of the model and just gives it a nice finishing touch. Now, you'll also notice that I've done the base. That's just for me to save time. If you're not comfortable putting that on yet, that's down to you. But because there's only the feet there at the bottom, I'm not going to catch anything. And if I do get paint on there, I can stick a grass tuft over it. It's not going to be the end of the world. So it just saved time and convenience for me to do it now. And if you're copying along, it's just stir the mud. Nice and simple. So the armour's done. We're going to move on to the cloak. Next up, we're going to focus on doing the cloak. Now, obviously the back, when you look at the box art, is black, but it does have that blue undertone. So we're just going to take one paint, or a couple of paints, mix it together and do one overall coat, both inside and outside, and then we can add a black as an overlayer with this as the underlayer afterwards. So let's talk colours. There is no individual colour that will just instantly replicate the Visarch's cloak. We need a mix where we've got that real rich royal blue and something that's a little bit more transparent just to tint that richness towards the colour scheme that we see. It's easily doable. It's a one-to-one mix. And the colours here are Stormfiend, that's our richness. And a little bit of transparency to give us that extra bit of oomph for the highlight is going to be Celestium Blue. Simply mix it together. I have added Lahmium Medium in a sense, but this is not a ratio mix. It is one-to-one Celestium Blue and Stormfiend with just a tiny drop of Lahmium Medium just to help the flow, because there's a large surface area, a lot of verticality. We just want to just make sure it's as perfect as possible. Now, the inside bit is the trickiest bit, as is the back of this leg. So I'm going to just talk you through it very briefly. Essentially, I've used a small layer brush, one that's a bit old, a bit battered. It's got a tip, it's not a fine tip, if you know what I mean. It's been used, it's been damaged, but it's got a lot of use in just getting into smaller areas like that, where it doesn't matter if I get paint in the fell, I can just move the brush around very carefully, catching every surface up to, but avoiding obviously the armour. Nice and simple, this section. Nice and simple, just sort of go from right to left, sort of in connect between, go around the back. The back of the leg is a bit tricky. You can easily reach it once again with that same battered old small layer brush, but you are inevitably going to catch the very back of his leg, just where my finger's pointing. Essentially, get the paint into or onto the cloak as quickly as possible, wash your brush, and because we've got the Lahmium Medium, just a few drops in place, just quickly wipe off that blue paint, and it will just clear it. Nice and simple. And obviously we're painting the black, just as I said, it's an underlayer. When you look at the highlights, there's a lot of blue in place. Essentially we're going to be doing something like black Templar straight over that once it's fully dry. So just give you a little 360, that's kind of what we're looking for. I've applied it a bit more heavily here, but it will pull away ever so slightly, giving us that brightened effect that we see on the box art. So let it dry and move on to the next step. Nice and simple, while we're waiting for the cloak to dry, we can focus on the fur. The colour is nice and simple. It's Gryph Grey. Just simply paint it straight over. Now, obviously we want to let it settle into the recesses. There are areas on the cloak, when you look at the box art, that have a slightly different colour, a more turquoisey tint to some of the bits of the fur. Essentially, we're not worrying about that at this stage. We're going to use Pterodon turquoise later on, and we might as well just paint the Gryph Grey simply over. It can act as an underlayer when we apply the turquoise later on. So, just paint it straight over. Simple as. And let it dry. And while we wait for the cloak to dry, we can move on to more parts. Still waiting for the cloak to dry, we can focus on the front sash, which goes round the waist too. Nice and simple, the colour is Skeleton Horde. We have no need to thin it down, just simply for the front of the cloak, start at the top in this section here, have a small amount on the brush, just paint it down, doing vertical sort of brush strokes, and just have a nice even layer across, obviously not forgetting the back, and then you've got the side going around the waist here. Nice and simple, it's really easy to achieve. Let that dry, we'll move on to the next step. Next up, while we're still waiting for bits to dry, we can focus on this little bit that's coming off the tip of the sword. Essentially, it's just sort of like fur strands that are coming off. It is a sort of purpley pinky colour. We can just easily achieve that with Sigval Burgundy. Once again, not thinning it down, just painting it straight on. Nice and simple. To get the underside, I really would turn the model upside down like that. That's what I had to do. But you can easily catch all the areas. Same on this bit. There's a little bit just on the inside here. Just angle your brush, literally looking that way down. Matching the box art, we can also base coat the eyes. It's nice and simple. When you look at the box art, they are a bright yellow. There's no better paint than Imperial Fist for this one. Now, while it is good to be neat, we haven't got to worry if we accidentally catch the edges of our red armour. Essentially, being so bright and vivid, it doesn't have an effect. I've accidentally caught the sides just ever so slightly. You don't notice, and if anything, it just adds to a kind of glowing effect. So, it's more serendipity. I'm not saying paint on around the edges, but if you do catch them, it's going to work to your advantage ever so slightly, as long as you don't have too much overloaded on your brush. Next up, we've got a whole host of new details, but the cloak is dry. Let's focus there first. Nice and simply, we're going to take Black Templar, and I have added Lahmium Medium, but we're not talking ratios here. We're talking just a single drop, just in a little mix, just to really help with the flow, just because there's a large surface area. Now nice and simply, we're painting it straight over. This is the whole back of the cloak. Obviously don't do it on this part. This is the inside that's folded over. It's just nice and simple. It darkens it down, and it's quite nice to see the bit here because you can see the difference. This is what we're aiming for. This is what it was. So just take your time. I started in this section up here. Obviously verticality and gravity being a thing. Go down, take it fold by fold until you get to the very end. Nice and simple. It's very easy to do, and it just darkens it down to the box art. We don't need to do any more of that. Now focusing on the fur up here, we're going to tint it ever so slightly. I refer to the box art here. There's no real method. I'm not going to point out each strand. You just do as little or as many as you want. I'm just mimicking the box art where I can see them. Essentially, it's just Pterodon turquoise, and we're just taking a small amount on a small airbrush and just painting just little sections, just randomly, or copying the box art like I did, just to tint it that little bit. Nice and simple, and it does make it look, you know, more effective. It does stand out a lot more. Moving on from that, we're going to do the little ropes. This is nice and simple. Agrax Earthshade straight over the white scar. Simply, Agrax Earthshade as a base coat on this colour just looks like traditional rope. So you've got all the little ropes that are around here that we avoided at the beginning, and then you've obviously got the ones around this section up here. Now, if you have caught paint on it, just simply relayer it in white scar before applying that Agrax Earthshade. Nice and simple. Let that all dry, and then we're going to move on to the sword. Now the Visarch sword is non-metallic. It has this sort of ethereal blue glow that's more towards the achromatic blue colour paint. But before we can do achromatic blue, we need an underlayer. So nice and simply, I've taken Pallid Glacier. This is a very transparent, very thin blue, and there's two advantages here. So we do want the underlayer, obviously, that's what I've said. So paint it on, start at the tip here, paint it all the way down. Again, gravity, verticality, I've been mentioning this a lot. But what it's going to do is it's going to pull in certain areas, mainly the under part of the blade down here, and we're going to use that to advantage. Obviously, don't let it pull too heavily. So you can see here, we're going to move that paint in a minute. We don't want it too heavily there and there, but that's just an example to show you what it's like. It's also got that central line that's a highlight all the way down, and because contrast paints pull, and because this is very transparent, especially over white scar, it's going to pull and leave that natural edge highlight in place, and it's going to give us an advantage to work around in the next step. So obviously before we move on to the next step, it has to fully dry. Well, it's obvious, it's always good to state it. So apply that, let it dry, check for pooling, and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to create a second underlayer to our sword. We're really starting to enhance that blue effect now. The colour is achromatic blue. Essentially, when you look at the blade, this is the default colour that you're seeing. And when you really examine it, it's more that this is the overall colour, even in the darker sections and the lighter sections now. Essentially, the heavy metal team have thinned it down and done umpteen glazes. So that's what we're going to do to begin with. Nice and simple. Take one part of this, literally one brush load, put it into a palette, and then take 4 brush loads of Lahmium Medium. This is going to really heavily glaze it down. Now with a small airbrush, and there is no other size to this, there's no other, or what if I do it with this brush, you're going to need small. We're going to start on the under section. Start at the top here and literally paint a nice thin layer, avoiding the edges. So you've got the central edge down the blade, and then you've got the outside edge. So simply paint it at the top and just drag the paint and get more if you need it, all the way down so you're covering that side. Do the same on the top section. Do the same down the central part up here, and obviously mirroring the other side. Now in certain areas it's going to be lighter, in other areas it's going to be heavier. Essentially that's what we want. We want light to really work effectively us, so you're just working with the shape of the blade. So let that settle. I'm letting it pull slightly heavily here now because I want to create a shadow effect. This is the colour we're looking for, so just take your time, be patient. It's very easy to achieve. You can't really make a mistake at this stage, and if you do, just wash the brush quickly, and while it's damp, just remove it from the edge, and it will correct. That heavy amount of Lahmium Medium is going to work in your favour here. So, obviously, let it dry before we move on to the next step. The next step is adding this gradient effect where it's getting darker, and it is really easy to do. Bear in mind, I'm going to do one more part after this. This is not yet complete, but this is going to be really effective. Now I'm going to talk about feathering. If you've not unaware of feathering before and you haven't seen it before, essentially you paint the contrast paint down quickly, wash the brush, and while the brush is damp, not completely dripping with water, you're essentially pulling the paint you've just painted while it's still wet out towards an area where you don't want it to be, and you're creating a natural blend. Essentially, contrast paints and water do not go together. Water destroys the molecules of a contrast paint. It's why you don't thin it down with water. But you can use that to your advantage, where you're just sort of destroying the paint, for no better term, and you're creating a natural blend because the particles get broken down and weakened significantly. So, with the theory out the way, let's talk the paint. We're taking pure achromatic blue. This time we're not thinning it down. Essentially, we're going to start with the underside. I find this the easiest in mapping this out. So you've got a section up here, literally paint it on, down to here, wash the brush, while it's damp, feather it out that way. Get more achromatic blue, paint a strip along this section roughly here, wash the brush, feather it out at the top end here, bottom end there. Nice and simple. Get some achromatic blue, start at the tip down here, paint upwards, wash your brush, feather out this way. Essentially, you've got a gap here and a gap here, and you're painting the achromatic blue on the top part there, the top part there. The other side, completely mirror it. With the achromatic blue in its purest form, paint it around the bottom here, up to the edges, not including the edges, and that's done. Essentially, that's the medium tone part done. We're going to add it one more time, and I'll explain that in the next step. And we're going to finish off that sword. Once again, we're taking pure achromatic blue. I'm not going to go into the theory this time. I've already explained that. Nice and simple. We're just taking a small amount, paint over what we've done. But this time we're picking certain sections. So for the top part, and again this is mirrored on the other side, paint a small section halfway down and then feather it out. Same at the bottom. Start from the bottom, work your way upwards halfway through what we've done before, feather it out. In these three sections here, we're just painting right in the middle, feathering it out at each end, but not the whole section. Essentially, these are the central, most darkest points, and the three up here, and it's the tip and the tip, bottom and top on this end. For this section, we're just painting achromatic blue once again, over, up to the edges, not including the edges, creating this darkened effect. Nice and simple. The other bits that we haven't done are going to be metallics. They're the gold. We'll paint those in a minute. What I am going to do at the end to give it an extra shine is give it a gloss varnish. It's something I want to do, but at the same time, it's down to you whether you want to copy that. If you're happy with it is, then you're happy as it is. And you can just leave it, but if you want that shine, then I'll showcase to you what it will look like at the end as well. So, let that dry, and we're going to move on to our metallic details. Now, before we move on to metallics, I've actually opted to do a dry brushing highlight first instead, and it's more vital to do this now than the metallics. Essentially, the dry brush I'm about to do will catch metallic details, and it means they get spoiled. We don't want that to happen. Sometimes it's best to highlight before finishing off all your base coats. So it's going to be the fur. Nice and simply, this is the Gryph Charger Grey and Pterodon Turquoise combined, and it's going to be Ulthuan Grey. Just a nice, simple, light dry brush. Use a small dry brush size, just so you don't catch the red armour. Essentially, there are little medallions and trinkets that are going to be painted in gold. And if you're going to dry brush it all, you're going to end up accidentally catch them. So it just makes sense getting this done and out the way first. And it completes the fur as well at the same time. So it's a win-win advantage. So get that done. And then for definite, we're moving on to our metallic details. Next up, we're going to base coat all of our gold details. And we're going very classic with Retributor armour. Now, there is a lot to cover. What I have done differently in the box art is I've done these little nodules up on the sort of backpack kind of thing that they have. But that's down to you whether you want them classic red or just something different. I wanted to break up that red because there's a lot of it. Now, things to note, obviously be careful when you get around this area behind, but it's easily doable with a small airbrush. And obviously take your time when you're doing a little trim on the blade because we don't want to spoil that. But essentially, I've painted the whole gem, so when you've got these little gem trinkets, we're not going to be shading those because I'm going to be painting Stormhost Silver in the centre of each gem to then put a contrast paint over that to create the colours and then giving a gloss varnish. But just do a little 360, just give you an idea. That's what we're looking for. Next up, we're going to base coat our silvers, and there'll be two different paints for that one. Next up, we're going to base coat our metallic details, and like I said, I've got two silvers here. Firstly, we're going mid-tone with Lead Belcher. This is simply for the spike on top of the helmet, and then you've got just around 4 mini little spikes, and we're just base coating those as well. Moving on from that, our other colour is Stormhost Silver. Now, nice and simply, we are picking out every single gem. So there's a lot to go through. I'm not going to point out every single one. We'll just do a little 360 nice and slowly. Essentially, I'm going to be painting a contrast paint straight over them just to really block in that colour. But we need a nice bright look to begin with just to really showcase it. So take your time, get those done, and we'll move on to painting in our gems as well as shading our metallic details. Next up, we're going to paint those gems and we're going to do the shading, making our model battle ready. Now, let's talk the normal shades first because I think that's nice and simple and get that out the way. So for the base, if you've done Stellar Mud, I have shaded with Agrax Earth Shade. It just darkens it down, gets into those recesses and just makes it really nice for dry brushing later on. For our gold details, and this is only a select amount, and I'll explain that in a second, it's Reikland Flesh Shade. We're going classic here, but we're limiting what we're doing. This is for none of the gems. This is essentially, you've got this little pauldron that's sticking out here, the one on the arm up there, and the sort of the bigger, chunkier areas of the sword, not including the little trim, not including the gem. So it's just a few select areas. The gems, obviously, we're doing in colour. So, moving on from that, my final shade is Nuln Oil. This is for our silver details. Again, very limited. It's just a spike up on the top, and you can just do the little spikes if you so wish. Now we're going to go on to our gems, and there are 4 different colours here. We are matching the box art. Essentially, I'm not going to go through all of them, like paint this one here and do that one there. Refer to the box art. I will do a 360 in a second, but let's talk the colours. There's blue, pink, green, and red. It's as simple as that. Our blue gems are done in Frostheart. Our red gems are done in Bile Red. Our green gems in Carandrass Green, and our pink gems in Doomfire Magenta. I've not thinned any of these down. Essentially, I've just taken the smallest tip on the brush and just blocking each gem. It's as simple as that. I referred to the box art, so I've matched mine. As you see on the box art, I'll do a little 360 for you. Just take your time, take one colour, and just literally do all the gems in that colour. Alternatively, paint them in whatever colour you want. There's no right or wrong in that sense. So just take your time, get all those details done. I'll do one more little 360 just to show it. Now at this stage, our model is battle ready. Bit of a joke because it's way beyond that, obviously. We've only got a couple of highlights to do, if that. And then there's a bit of freehanding that we can also do. So we're going to take the Visarch to the next level with some highlighting. Next up, I'm going to go through all the highlights to really finish off our model. This is going to cover them all in one go. So let's start with our skeleton horde colour. This kind of rope's going around the waist as well as the main sort of banner, sash that's coming out on the front. The colour is Pallid Witch Flesh. We've gone bright and bold with the other colours. We're doing the same here. It's very subtle in that sense. Screaming Skull wouldn't pick it out, but Pallid Witch Flesh will absolutely give a nice extra toned highlight. So that's that one. Moving on to our cloak, we've got 2 different colours. We've obviously got the black section and we've got the blue section. We can't do it in one, we do need 2. So focusing on the inside first, there's not really much to do, just scratch a few little highlights in. The colour I've gone here is with Ahriman Blue. This is quite a vivid blue, it's one I rarely use, and it's just really effective in the sense that it really stands out nicely, but also subtly. It's not too glarish, it's just right for this kind of blue tone that we got here. So nice and simple. Most of the highlights, the areas you need to do, you can absolutely see because of the way we've contrast painted it. The back of the cloak, obviously we want to keep the blue theme going, but we obviously want to address the fact that it's black rather than blue. It's got the blue undertone. The colour here is Russ Grey. Greys work well with blacks, but we want a blue grey, and this is the perfect mid-tone kind of highlight that really picks out and stands out nicely. Moving on from that, we've got this little pink sash down here that's coming off the hilt of the sword. Nice and simple, we're going to highlight each strand with pink horror. It's going to be very subtle in the sense that it doesn't really stand out that much at all. It's just a really nice kind of relayer slash highlight that's really subtle. But for the tips, we want to pick them out just a little bit more. And we're going to the extreme end of pink highlights with foreground pink. Essentially, it's just a spot highlight. That's all we're applying here on the very tips on the ends of them. Moving on from that, we're going on to our metallic details. Again, we're keeping nice and simple. There's not a lot to do here at all. Liberator Gold is for the bits that we shaded with Reich and Flesh Shade. We're doing classic edge highlighting here, so the bits around the sword, this kind of section here. Am I worrying about all the gems? No, you don't need to, because we haven't shaded them down, and I'm going to add a gloss varnish over them anyway. It's going to have a natural shine. It's up to you if you want to push it just to add a little bit more brighter. It's not necessary. This is just for the bits that we highlighted, or shaded, should I say. Now for our silver details, there's very few to pick out here. The colour I've gone with is Stormhost Silver. This is just the top bit. This is what we did in the Lead Belcher. We're just doing classic edge highlighting on the top horn, and then just spot highlights on the tips of those little spikes. Moving on from that, we want to make our gems shiny. We could go into sort of classic style of highlighting them all, but we've got to remember this is a tiny little model. For most people, and for yourself when you're looking at it, you're not going to be really looking at it for a camera lens, you're going to be looking at it face to face. And simple, we can just pick it out in hard coat, a gloss varnish, just to really make them shine, and wherever light hits, it has a reflection of that light angle. So that's what I've done, nice and simple. Lastly, we've got the base, and all we're going to do here is a simple dry brush of Screaming Skull, just to pick out all that kind of area. Now at this stage, the model is 100% complete. Now there is the freehanding that we can do, but if you're not confident doing that, we can just leave it as it is, because it looks absolutely fantastic. Add some tufts, paint them in the base, and essentially the Visarch is done. Next up, we're going to do our freehanding, starting with this front sash. Right at the front here, the colour is Abaddon Black. Nice and simple, we're going to match the box art. And it's really easy to do. You know, it looks more complicated than it is. Essentially, think of these as pure lines rather than an actual symbol, and it'll become a lot easier. We're going to break it down how I did it. So first of all, it's not straight. We're going to angle the model like this, and this is the straight line here. So essentially, take the middle gem that you can see here and start roughly where you see the top and draw a straight line down. It's as simple as that. From that bit, go to the left, to the bottom left, do a curved line, bottom right, curved line. Essentially, they're mirrors. Now these two lines underneath are just really simple. Start at the top line, and you haven't got to measure out where they are. Essentially, it's right to the end, right to the end. You're going right to the end where that section meets there. Once you've got that measured in place, the line underneath is even simple. It's just half of that width. It's really, really simple. The bottom lines are nice and simple too. We're going to turn the model upside down. Do the bottom line first, because that's going to measure how much distance you've got. In a sense, if you do the top line first, you're going to potentially not have enough space to do the bottom line. Bottom line, just make sure you've got, start one end, just measure the distance. And I started from the right going to the left. You can measure the distance as you're going along and just keep it consistent. Then, obviously, just follow the second line. If you do make a mistake, you can correct it with Screaming Skull. So, get that done, and then we'll move on to the next bit, which is going to be a lot more complicated. And finally, there is this Eldari inscription patterning that goes all around that bottom part of the cloak. It is complex, and I just want to explain. First of all, let's do the colour, because that's the simplest bit. Flash Gitch Yellow is what I've used. I've only used a small airbrush, obviously only a tip of the paint on each one, and we're making it as tiny as possible. Essentially, it's just scratch work into this patterning. Now, there is method in the sense of, obviously, it's straight lines. There is a certain pattern that I've done following the box art, but there is a limit, and this is what I want to explain for what we see in the Heavy Metal team. You can see most of it with a 360 image on the website. However, it's quite clear either they've darkened areas out so you can't see it, or the Heavy Metal team left out quite a few sections. Now, essentially, you can reach the underpart here, going this way with a brush, same on this part here, but those areas they've left blank. And to show you the kind of inscription we're looking for, I found it easy just to write them down first. So this is what we can see on the website. This is the box art image, going from right all the way to the left hand side here. So essentially that's the pattern I copied. These are the areas that are blanked out, essentially area 1 being just where my finger's pointing now, area 2 being roughly about here. They're blank and they're blacked out on the website image. So essentially what I've done is I have gone all the way along. I have done different symbols, essentially replicating a few and making just similar ones, mostly sticking with this kind of dash kind of area because that's the most simplest one to do. So if you want to do it, this is what I recommend. I simply had this out in front of me, just tiny, start from right to left. Does it have to be perfect? No. Do you have to have every single one? No, not in my opinion. It's essentially just creating something that looks very similar, because remember, when you got it zoomed up like that, yeah, that's big, but the reality is it's not that big at all. So if you want to do it, that's my recommendation. Flash Gets Yellow is bright enough that we just have a small tip of the brush and we can just scratch at those surfaces. Now at this point the model is completely done. All I'm going to do now is the rim of the base, which I like to do in Abaddon black, and add a few flowers, a few tufts, just to really showcase this model, and we're done. And there we have it. The Visarch is complete, and I must say I'm really proud of this one. It's one of those models I've owned for quite a few years, and just the intensity of what it is, it was just too much for me. There was no guides, no guidance, in a sense. It was before I was doing contrast painting anyway, and there was just absolutely nothing. And at that point, it was like, well, I'll leave that for a rainy day project. And yeah, granted, the weather's not very good at the moment, but that's got nothing to do with it. It's just been a joy to really showcase how to get this done and actually put a guide out there for other people like myself. Now, if this video has helped inspire, then please show that hobby love. Give the video a like. Share so others can find my video and get supported in painting their models too, as well as finding my channel and the many other guides that exist on there already. And if you haven't, then please subscribe. It's support that helps the channel grow. Equally, supporting me means I get to continue supporting you, the awesome Warhammer community. So, until the next video, do look after yourselves, and happy hobbying.